Start. Good evening and welcome to this Look Software webinar, Green Screen Modernization in Half the Time. I'm Nick Hampson and I'll be one of the hosts on this session tonight, and joining me today is Trevor Perry, who obviously needs no explanation in the IBMI community, a friend and colleague of mine for many, many years, and an expert on modernization, somebody who has seen this done in the field many thousands of times. So without further ado, I shall hand over now to Trevor to introduce the subject and lead us into some great information. Trevor?
So thanks, Nick. This is yourself and myself who are going to be doing this, and I'm going to be introducing the modernization challenges and then followed by you doing a demo of all of the cool features. So my job is at Fresche is in modernization. It's been that way pretty much for about 25 years, and I've seen every definition of the word come and go. And so everybody asked me, what is modernization? Why should we do modernization? And today we're going to introduce some challenges for you to think about in your modernization journey. But before we begin, I'm just going to throw some questions out. And I do this a lot in my sessions, and it's very exciting that people don't have an answer and realize that it doesn't take long to get these answers. So the first question is really, before we begin, what is IT infrastructure? On the right is Fresche's new Power 8 box, and a lot of people look at that and go, oh yeah, that's it, that's the infrastructure. But it's more than just that. It is the hardware. It's also the network that is connecting everybody, and now network also includes cloud. Part of it is your applications. One of the most important things of your infrastructure is actually delivery of the information. We are information technology, and our job is to deliver information using technology. We are the custodians of the data, but our job is to manipulate and analyze the data for the user or give them the tools. Security is a big part of infrastructure that's becoming more and more important. But then part of your infrastructure is also the skills of the people that you have, and also the skills of all the stakeholders. And the stakeholders could be a consumer who accesses your information, your product. You could be a vendor, could be a customer, could be a partner in some form. It could be an employee who's using the system. It could be an IT person. It could be management, or it even could be as high as the board of the company who needs information. We've got to consider all of these things as part of our IT infrastructure at a minimum moving forward. Now, if I look at that IT infrastructure, my first question to you is, if you built that today, what would it look like? And we have a different set of tools and a different approach than traditionally, and probably we'd start in a very, very different place. Most companies that begin are not in the business of IT. They're in the business of something else, widgets or services, some kind of product. And that's what you need to focus on, and we're actually there to support that. We're not in the business of building an IT company as a norm, and given that, most people wouldn't start by bringing your IT in-house. Now, traditionally, and I've talked recently with a lot of people who are, 30-year veterans of IBMI, and they say, but that's where I would begin. And obviously, security means I might want to bring that in-house. But for the most part, considering where data can be stored today in the cloud and how secure it is, provided you have the right contracts and the right trust relationships, you'd probably start more off-site in the cloud somewhere else. So we have to think about that. But it includes all of these things. Where would your email be? That would be the first thing you would need, and that might be Gmail. If you want some security, obviously you would choose a different email provider, but you're going to need some kind of ERP system, CRM. You need some collaboration amongst people, and more those tools are on the web and they're provided by somebody else. Mobile is definitely something we have to consider. Cloud is overarching through all of those things, and IBM is actually talking about CAMS, which is Cloud, Analytics, Social, and Mobile, and those are the things that are really important to us today. So how would you build all of that in your world in IT today? So if you look at that and then you say it might take me a couple of years to build that, and on the way there's going to be some changes and things like that. So let's look about 2 years out and say, That's what my IT infrastructure should look like if I started today and took about 2 years to build it. That is your destination. The answer to that question, and that's different for everybody, that's your destination of modernization. Now, should you consider all of these things exactly the same in 2 years? Yes, but there's going to be some extra things that you're going to have to do. And Gartner is the place where people always go back and say, yeah, they're the most important people. This hype cycle chart is really quite fabulous. If you look at it on the right-hand side, the green, the cloud, mobile, social, those kinds of technologies are actually maturing, and they're becoming and heading towards what they call the plateau of productivity. But things that are coming up today, things like the IoT, Internet of Things, or blockchain, wearable, 3D printing, digital workplace, those things are having an impact. People are coming in and saying, I need blockchain to help run my supply chain, or I've got wearable devices and I'm collecting information, or maybe I need to have a lot of things out in the world connected through the Internet of Things that are going to supply information. I've got more and more and more data coming in. What of that needs to be applied today given the situation that you're in and where you're headed? And you have to consider all of these things. So you can't just say, yeah, I'll look at what is available to me today, but you've also got to look ahead a little bit. And so these are the things that you need to consider. So you might add Internet of Things and wearables, you might add some of those things, but definitely you can't just stop at what I know today or what I've known traditionally. So that's the first question is where are you headed? Now, what does your infrastructure look like today? And I put a calendar with an arrow at December 2006, and that's 10 years ago. Is your infrastructure 10 years old? I've got a lot of customers whose infrastructure is 15 or their applications are 30 years old, and they continue to use them, and there's value there. But what does it look like today? And most people don't even know what it looks like today, and we need to in order to understand how to move forward. And once I know where I'm at, once I know where I'm headed, then I've got to build this roadmap to tell me how to get there. And it may be several steps. There may be actually some things happening simultaneously. It may not just be one big long flow, but it's a roadmap. And that's what modernization is. Modernization is the transformation of your infrastructure from where it is today to where it should be today. That's a roadmap. Everybody's roadmap is a little different, absolutely. There's no question about that. There's some that are very similar, and you can take some approaches, but it's really difficult when you get a lot of vendors telling you which direction you need to go. That is yours, and that should be custom to you. And I actually enjoy this the most of my job. We do discovery services where we go out and find where somebody is and where they're headed and what their requirements are. And we actually apply a roadmap to all of these different things. And they may be done differently, and they may be done together, but people's skills is a roadmap, part of transformation and part of modernization that people neglect. But we need to actually help our people move forward. And if not, then we need to replace them because that's a possibility. And that means we need to bring people in. So roadmaps are really hard to understand. They're very detailed. But the first part is people just don't know where we are. So the strategy that I apply makes it very, very simple. It's very simple. What do we have? Where are we headed? What road should we take? This is my smiley face strategy. What do we have is the beginning point. Where are we headed is the end point and the road that we take. So think of strategy in that way. There's a lot more detail under here, but this is a simple approach, and you can apply this at a macro level. You can apply it at a micro level. You can apply it to different projects. But it's really up to you how you do this. But those are the keys to modernization and building that roadmap. There are some considerations. Do not underestimate the effort. We find a lot of times people have done something, it's taken too long. SAP is a really good example. I'm going to take everything, throw it away, and replace it with SAP, and 10 years later they're still doing it. That effort is really huge. But if you start small and you get some successes on a regular basis, you can actually do modernization in place, and it works very, very well. So data entry is a really good place. Find all the manual data entry, the typing, or the, anything that's manual effort, writing and transforming anything, turn it into some electronic collection. Those are the modernization projects that you need to understand and do the best. Information delivery is the next one, getting the information out of your system. This will help you in your roadmap. Align everything to business strategy and focus on the business needs. You are not in the business of IT, you're in the business of widgets or product or whatever it is. That's what we're heading for, and we must always be sure that security is a key part of our moving forward. It's too difficult and too costly to build security back in and retrofit it. There's lots of reasons why you should modernize, why you should do this transformation from today. Obviously, you've got existing processes and assets that you can reuse and leverage. You can get, if you do it and get to a modern place, you'll get talent acquisition easier and you'll retain people longer rather than saying, I'm 19 years old and I don't know what that green screen DOS SEU thing is, I'm leaving. It'll give you business agility so that now you can actually respond to opportunities or threats from competitors where you can build new applications in a very short period of time because it's modularized. You can orchestrate things together quickly. Business agility is a very key thing. Not only is a business agile, but IT has to be agile to support that. Increase the speed of innovation, that helps with business agility, and then you can innovate some new technology, something comes in, you can get there quickly. Improve your business processes and workflow, that makes your users more efficient, get more done, you can increase sales and profits that way, and that's always good for a bottom line for a business. Improve your data model, that can be scalable, maintainable, and also perform better as well and provide an intuitive user experience. These are the key reasons. There are tons more. These are the main ones, that are the reasons you should modernize. And you can go to your business and say, this is why I need to modernize. The challenges are obviously getting started, kicking this off. For some people, they don't realize they've already started. They're already changing things. They're delivering information in new ways. So they are already started. So it's not really a breaking point. The cost is always a challenge. Disruption, you should be able to modernize in place without huge disruption to the user workflow, to the business itself. Skills are a challenge, getting new people. The good part about IBMI is the fact that not only do we have open source that we can run and deliver information very quickly, gather information very quickly, and build those applications quickly, but we can also build new RPG that looks very modern, and people can learn and use and leverage RPG and SQL on IBMI very, very quickly. The biggest challenge, and one we're going to talk about today, is the knowledge gap. And that is, I don't even know what the users are doing, so where do I start? I don't even know what the users are not doing, and I don't even know what the users can do. I recently wrote a web service enabling a reservation system, and this was just a tip of the iceberg screen flow that I wrote. And when I did this and went through with the customer, they said, we didn't even know it did some of those things. We expected it, but that extra bit that you put in there. So having some kind of diagram like this is going to be very helpful, but you need to know, and it was a lot of effort, a lot of manual effort to be able to go build that and understand exactly what the users were doing, what they didn't do, and what they could do. Well, I don't know what they're not doing here, and so fortunately, working with Fresche, we've been able to use the X analysis tools, which actually helps understand exactly what's going on and how it's being used. The hardest part is really what's actually going on at the user level, because if you build it, will they come? Not necessarily, and there may be things in there that we really don't use anymore because we don't need it as part of our job, or maybe it's only used once in a while. And so gathering that information is really key. That'll help you close that knowledge gap and help you to answer all the questions about where should I begin and what should I do. And that's what Nick's going to talk about today. He's going to talk about another way to gather some really information on top of all the cool things that are going on with Newlook 10.4. So Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Trevor. Welcome again, everybody. So I'm just going to start this off with the reason why we built the Insights tool that we're going to be showing you in a second. And the reason is there's a design rule we've worked with for many, many years, the 80-20 rule. Users spend 80% of their time in 20% of the application. And often it's even more skewed than that. In applications we've seen for literally, over the course of now 2 decades, this has proven true. And while we've always espoused the advantage of finding that 20% and putting your effort into the 20%, we've never had a tool to help our customers do that. The global part of the recognition within the Look software suite really, really helps, but we've never been able to systematically focus very easily, and so we've seen many diagrams, as you saw what Trevor showed there, or many assumptions being made as to what's the key parts of the application. And that really is the key that was the design goal for Insights. So I'll show an application graph here within Insights, and this is recorded from user data. So it's literally a tool that sits on the user's desktop and records all of the screens that they're using, all of the fields within the screens they're using, and builds up a map of that. Now the one I'm showing on the screen here is a fairly common end user workflow, what a typical user would do in the day. It's not a massive amount of screens, there's quite a lot of things going on, and this is just part of a 2,500 screen application. So finding this information can be really complicated, and we've just created a very simple tool that will record on the desktop. The recording can then be analyzed within the developer IDE, and we can see very simply the application as it is and have a look around, and then if we want to, we can then heat map this and see where the key screens are, those core destination screens, the screens that are used a lot of the time. And we can visualize these in different ways by visit count, time spent, combinations of the two, and that will give us not only the most used screens, but also if we look at a high usage count and low time spent, they're probably screens that we can blast past and reduce the navigational complexity for users because they're not being used all the time. But it enables us to see, out of the things that people do in the real world, what are they actually spending their time in? And visualizations also make it a lot easier to understand what to do. If we look at this top right hand corner here, we have a main screen with 4 screens that are accessed from it and 1 screen that is further down, a comment screen. So this is probably, if it was used quite a lot, there are the typical IBM I screens where you have to go to screens and then there is a screen that's a function key off from another part of the system. These kind of things are very hard to learn for new users, and this map you see on the screen here is very similar to what a new user has to learn when they pick the application up. They build a cognitive map which is very similar to this, and you can see there's a lot of complexity in just a fairly standard set of processes here. So we can do things to flatten that out and make it easier, but also to focus our effort on those key screens. And this is the thing that we've seen for many years, is if you have an amount of time to spend on modernization, we think it is absolutely critical that that time you spent is on adding value, not just turning green on black into gray on white. Everybody can do that. Really putting the time and effort into those core screens so that you make them more productive, higher workflow, all of those things that Trevor's just mentioned, and that the 80% that are not used a lot of the time are just great out of the box. So the whole point behind Insights is to give you that ability to take you through that process. And if I just zoom in a little bit here, not only can you use this to see a screen, so I can look at a screen here and see the screen and all the details, and I can also, if I'd recorded it, see the heat mapped information for the screen, so I can see what function keys, input and output information is there. But as I'm going through this process and I'm picking my screens and working on them, I get a little check confirmation showing that I've actually overridden those particular screens and gone through that part of the process. And we've got quite a few different visualization options here, including bringing in multiple users so that you can overlay different users over each other, see whether people are doing the work the same way, or even see if 2 different types of users have any combined screens. We have a Venn diagram equivalent action here which shows only the conjoined options from 2 different users to be able to visualize that too. And all of these visualizations are all about finding the core bits of the application, finding things where you can make the application better for the users so that we can make these new applications genuinely valuable for them. the existing business logic in IBMI is undoubted. The applications have been customized over many years, but what we need to do is make that work in a graphical world. So to show an example of what that looks like, I'll just show a few app screens here and just rid my developer out of the way to make it a bit easier to see. So sign-on screen, we're always going to try and make look nice, gives them something modern to look at. Menus in the application are also something that we want to be able to deal with and think in a different way. So this particular application has lots and lots of menus, 93 of them on 5 levels. But what we've done here is taken the core things for each user group and put them onto a single menu. So they have a few searches, which is actually the IBMI subfile logic for those searches, the position twos, and some of the main actions. So we directly get to what they do all day, every day. Now this is one of those 20% things. We put a little bit of effort onto this, but it dramatically changes the way that people work. We're getting rid of all the complexity of navigation and menus and giving them a very simple interface with the things that they do every single day. Nice and easy. They can access those other menus. I've got that screen, a couple of screens on, and we'll show you that. But this is what they would see for the majority of the time. In a core application screen, we might do such things as splitting a single busy green screen, tombstoning the information in case we lose context of who we're dealing with, split that busy screen into 2 different tabs so that we're more clearly focused on the information, and have all of those function keys available now as tab items across the top. So where you have things like this was a F8 for credit here, but then the history screens were from the main screen. You had to go to the credit screen and then hit F15. So this was kind of F8, F15, F8, F16, F8, F17. Really, really complex model that we're having to build in our head here. Now with tabs, it's a really simple, flattened architecture, very, very easy to do, along with mapping and documents that are web and PC application links as well, bringing IBM out of being this silo into IBMI web and desktop working seamlessly together, and the users don't have to think of them as different things because they've just been blended perfectly with each other. So these kind of core destination screens are obviously where you'd put some effort, but they're where the benefits of integration really give the users an advantage, and these are those core screens they spend all of their time in. So any little effort here to make things better is picked up by many users many times per day, rather than having to think of the entire application screen by screen, benefit from tweaking screens that people hardly ever see. Here's a standard menu. So out of those menus that the users don't see very often, this is a normal kind of underneath here is a typical IBMI style menu, and they can just go and click on the items here and get through all of their other menus. In those rare occasions they need to do somebody else's job, do that end of year task, but they don't typically see these tree style menus anymore, or any kind of tree style structure, which is always going to be hard because you have to know how to traverse it to get to the node. And then if we want to look at an idea of what you get in that out the box, so the 80% that we don't want to have to go and spend all the time touching, then it can still have nice subfiles, data grids with right-click options, radio buttons, combo boxes, date combos, prompts, up-downs, checkboxes. All of our function keys are coming up here and are nicely iconically represented. This entire screen is totally out of the box. There's been nothing done to this at all. It's all based on the quality of the recognition and what it can automatically produce. Now that recognition is based on the IBM CUA standard, but it's also extensible to be able to understand your application and your rules as well, to be able to have that 80% of the application still produce a great, perfectly acceptable and modern UI. We're not just talking about changing colors, we are dynamically building 11 different types of graphical controls here, and doing that based on the application, tuned to that application, so that you can focus all of your effort on that core 20% where you will make the users quicker, make it easier to learn for people, and add genuine business advantage. You know, our applications and our IBMI systems are part of the unique advantage that most people have nowadays, and we really need to be able to put IT in a position to be able to go out to the business and say, if I do this, will that make your job easier, or can we do this as part of our unique selling proposition with our business? And you know, to have the time, because we're not having to think about every screen on a screen-by-screen basis, lets you focus on really adding to what the business can do, adding to the user's productivity and making things better, rather than that drudgery of green on black to grey on white, green on black to grey on white, which has absolutely no value in of itself. So that's the Insights tool and how we use it, and what we're really aiming at here is to use this 80-20 principle to focus on those core screens, find where they are by true statistical analysis and gathering of information, rather than anything that's guessing or is hard and manual processes to do. We've seen people with video cameras and lots of other things in the past that are really painful to get through. And this is a really simple, easy tool that records from the users. They send in a simple file, we can import them, show them with each other, and focus on the actual building of the application and the value that's put into that. So Insights is part of the latest release of Newlook, which is 10.4, as we just mentioned. There are some other things in that, and I'll just mention them quickly. So within the 10.4 update of the Look software tools, we do have the Insights, which is both the recording and the playback and analysis tools and the application graphs you saw. We also have a web API. Now, for people who've seen our product and used it before and have the Smart Client API, it can talk to other applications, sit within portals, things like that. Really powerful. We have the same now for our pure HTML5 experience, so all of the object model exposed, all of the play transactions, get value, set value is all available. And one of our business partners has done some preliminary work with this, and with just a small amount of effort, this is it running inside their application. So this is a pure HTML application running, and the reuse of application IBMI screens here shown out the box without any real stylistic effort put into them, imported and controlled within that. So as you take items and work with them here within the application, you'll see them being upgraded, the green screens or the data that are being visualized there. So that web API really, really useful for people who are leveraging the Look technologies within other applications, whether it be portals or you know, more heavily customized applications. Project import and export. So the ability to work with an XML definition of all of the parts of the application. We've been able to work with management systems for many, many years, but this means it's a lot easier to work with the more modern tools like GitHub and SVN, the text-based systems, and do those really simple modern merges with all of the parts and the definitions of the recognition engine that can be managed directly on any application or on IBMI. And for some of the UI changes, we've added CSS access to function key text and screen title. So if you see here the function keys we bring out into the different locations, we do that for usability reasons, and we add icons to them. And in the past they were actually based on the icon, the function key number. Now they can be based on the text, function key number, or a combination of the two. And we can do the same with the screen titles as well. So this gives you really nice visual information. Now, it's not only aesthetically pleasing, but actually something that makes things much easier for users to understand, because your brain is keyed to pick up pictures much faster than you read information. It's about 1,600 times. So you get that information much more quickly. It's much more intuitive, and you can group things and help people understand. It really, really helps, not only with the aesthetics, which is never going to hurt anybody, but actually with recognition over recall, and genuine differences to the learnability of the application. And custom device sizes, we've had many custom device sizes for mobile development within the past for quite a few years now, and we've created the ability for developers to be able to create their own sizes very, very easily on here, so that they can work with their own custom sizes or applications as they come up. So if in between releases of the product we can't keep up with the data that's coming through and the new phones that are being delivered, and we'd have to wait to a new release, somebody can get a new phone, put the size in, and be working with that straight away and not even have to have that short release time delay. So they can work with whatever you want to there with custom device sizes. So that's the main part of the webinar over now. What we'd like to do is go through to a Q&A session. So we'll bring Trevor back in, our expert on all things IBM and modernization, and ask whether anybody's got any questions we can answer on this. We'll open the floor.
It looks pretty empty in the question list. We may have to poke a few of our attendees and see what's going on. So, Nick, have you got some examples of the insights and people are using it yet, or is this still being just beta tested?
No, it's out there in the field now. So it's been released for a short while, and we've had people beta testing it for a while now. And you know, we've seen quite a few different things come back in. Some people actually not using it to do any testing for usability, but actually looking at what different users are doing and seeing if they can find the optimal process for job booking. That was quite interesting. And the major feedback we've got is that what people thought the process was and what the process actually was quite dramatically different. So we've had a lot of existing customers say that to us, and you know, I thought that was really, really interesting.
Is there an average length of time where we recommend that the collection should take place? Is it a day, a week, or does it take up to a month to get valuable information, even if you're focusing on a particular area?
It can actually be very quick. There's nothing stopping you just recording a user going through a standard process, or just leaving it going for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour, just to depending on the time they would spend doing the average process. So if we're talking about understanding a specific work process, then you know, typically you would be looking at something for between 30 minutes and an hour to get some detail on that. If they have very, very long processes, that would have to run a bit longer. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, and we have a couple of questions now. So, and this is a little more technical. So what's the performance impact? You say turn it on for 5 or 10 minutes. Is that going to slow the user down in the collection of the data?
No, not at all. The process is very simple, and it's just recording a simple XML output, so it has no performance impact whatsoever.
And then somebody said, how do we enable the analytics? So how do we turn it on?
Sure. So the recording part is part of the Smart Client tool that can be deployed to the end user's desktop, and this is, you know, it can either be their actual system, or if they're using the thin client, the HTML, then they can just use a couple of smart clients just to actually do the capture. And you know, it can literally be pushed out via the smart client. There's just a command line option to be able to do this. So there's just an option to fire up the recording and then a file that's created. And the analytics part of it within in Newlook 10.4, so people would just need Newlook 10.4.
And then there's a nice question that says, do you have any contrast to the other vendors in this space? And before you answer that, I would say there are no other vendors in this actual space of collecting this information. Do you know of any?
I don't, certainly not within what we do. There are people doing eye tracking and website analytics for click-throughs and things like that, but not in the application area. And I don't know whoever was that put that, but we'll have to make sure he gets his $5. You know, really there aren't any other people doing this, and really for me that's been the major gripe, that often our customers are seeing what our competition does as well as what we do, and then they go into this one-by-one process. And this was really my design goal with this tool, was to get away from thinking about things in a screen-by-screen process and focus on those value areas, because nobody has enough time to do a good job in a one-by-one process.
And so this is fairly unique in that it has a heat map front end and looks pretty good. The new stuff that's in IBMI 7.3 with the security collection information, authority collection information that came with the operating system is doing a similar thing. In other words, it's actually telling people what authorities that a user needs to an object regardless of what authority they have, so you can compare it and clean it up. And it is a bit of analytics, but it's not got any nice, beautiful front end like this heat map. And is the heat map something that actually is going to help the users understand it better, or do we also need to be able to look at it in, you know, technical lists and subfiles of information like we're traditionally used to? You know, the heat map seems to be a very modern thing, and is that why it was designed that way?
Yeah, I mean, it is, you know, something that, you know, we've looked at whether we might provide an Excel output in future for people to have and specifically tick items off if they want to, but it can be done in an entirely graphical way. And, you know, it's funny, you know, one of the challenges we might look at in the future is the security collection API, because, you know, it would look great through something like this too.
So to continue the same question, the same person who asked that, contrast to other vendors, also said, what about the workbench? You might be able to translate that. I'm not sure what he means. Well, we'll wait for him to clarify. In the meantime, there's another question that says, does the product, not sure what the product, if it's Insights or Newlook 10.4, only work with standard IBMI menu systems, or can it also handle, quote, homegrown menus?
Sure. And the answer to that is it works fine with any system. So it works great with IBMI menu systems. It will also handle homegrown ones and is easily customizable, even if we see something that we've never seen before. You know, that's really, really easy to deal with. We've been doing this, and the recognition engine's been tuned now since 1995 over RPG, COBOL, CL, and all those type of applications. So I very much doubt we'd see something we haven't hit before, and there's a lot of configuration there to deal with that, even if we did. So yeah, it's not just IBM CUA standard stuff we deal with, but that's the core part of the recognition that you don't have to tune, that is built in if you have some of those elements available.
So if you've extended the application with refacing and repurposing using the full Newlook tool, then does the value of the insights increase?
Yeah, I mean, you know, everything's built to work together at the end of the day, and the whole point about almost everything we do, and I'm trying to think, it probably is everything we do, is to reduce the effort. It is to get away from, you know, thinking about screen by screen or field by field, and abstract that back to, you know, what's standard for the whole application. Is, if there's some CUA compliant stuff in there, great. If there's not, what is it? Let's work at it at that level, and only go down to the more screen by screen level where we absolutely have to. So, you know, the idea with Insights is to help us do less screen and focus on where we are where we are going to put a bit more work in, and really keep us on the straight and narrow there, and understand truly what the users are doing.
So if I was a Newlook customer, then this is a real easy thing for me to switch on and off. And But what if I wasn't a Newlook customer and I wanted to try this? Do I need to build a full-blown Newlook solution? Is there a way I can deliver this to a client, run it, and collect the data without having to interrupt their workflow?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really easy tool to use, so you can get in touch with us and get an evaluation copy of that. In terms of the end user runtime, for somebody who's never seen the product before, we'd probably want to spend 5 minutes giving you a bit of a hand to get yourself set up there, but it's very, very easy. All the users are going to see is a slightly more modern interface, but we probably switch off a lot of the recognition to keep it very, very comparable to what they're used to. And they're going to be working in their old system that they were used to, but just we're recording the information out from there. So there's very, very little impact at all. The only thing that you might actually get the users to do that's not the norm is we have to get you to click to pick output fields. So this is more interesting if you go into mobile, where you want to cut away a lot of the information that you don't need. You will need for them to actually tag, and they can just do this literally by pointing and clicking with a mouse to gather output fields that they're looking at, so that we can see not only the fields that they're using but the information that they're looking at. And as I say, the simple click is the great way of doing that. Other than that, we're getting into the kind of eye tracking and VR glasses kind of area.
And that's really just to deliver an extreme detailed level of analysis if you're doing that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty critical to building a mobile application, because you're going to want to cut away everything you don't need. It's not required for any other type of analysis.
So the next question was actually an extension of that. If configuration is required for an odd application or environment, does it require any changes to the application itself?
Okay. The simple answer is no, but you can if you want to. So both at a global level and down at an individual level, you can make the customizations without ever having to touch your application. DDS, source code, whichever way you want to look at it, because we have quite a few customers who don't have that, who are just the end users of applications. You do have the choice if you want to go and make changes, because it's easy for you to do that, to make your application screens a little bit different at the DDS level, to get more bang for your buck in that way, and we have people who do that too. It's really just down to whatever's better for the situation and the particular company.
All right, so we haven't actually had a response about the workbench question, so we'll wait maybe a little bit. The other questions that have been thrown in there are just that this was a great session, so patting myself on the back, trying to reach out and pat yours, but that's about it. So I think we've reached the end.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for their time. Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks, Nick.